Hello ladies and gentlemen, we're back again. Today we're going to continue talking about notes 3.4, which was talking about rotations. Again, we've talked about reflections and translations, and now we're going to continue talking about rotations. So again, our next example says describe the transformation in two ways. So remember, you got to give me your coordinates as well as in words what the rule is. All right, so for number 3, I chose y. Okay, so y has the coordinates of -2, +3. So if you notice, y is 2 spaces to the left and 3 spaces up. So that's why it was -2, 3. So remember, you can always label your x and y. You don't have to on the Google slide, but you need to write y, parentheses, -2, +3. All right, so remembering that we want to find the coordinates for y prime. So y prime, if you come over here, it's going to be 2, -3, because we went 2 spaces over to the right and 3 spaces down. Okay, so from there we look at our numbers. Now our numbers didn't change, they didn't change order, and they didn't change. 2 didn't become a 4 and 7 didn't become a 6 or something of that nature. So what changed was our signs, notice. Okay, so let's see what happened. Okay, so x changed because it went from -2 to +2, and y changed because it went from +3 to -3. So that means our rule, which you need to write, is -x, -y. The only transformation that has this rule is, and you need to write this in the bottom box, rotation of 180 degrees. Okay? You could just write 180. You don't have to put degrees, but just put 180. All right? So that's number 3. So number 4, I'm going to choose C. Okay? C has the coordinates of 2, 1, because I went over to the right 2 spaces and up 1 space. So remember, that's our x and our y. C prime has the coordinates of -1, 2, okay, because I went over to the left 1 space and up 2 spaces. All right, so again, we want to look and see what happened. First of all, our order changed. It was originally 2, 1, and now it's -1, 2. So we know that happened. So the other thing we noticed was, look at the signs. The x didn't change. The y did. It went from +1 to -1. So that means that we're going to say -y, x. Okay, the only transformation that we covered on this section was that had the rule of -y, x was rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise. And you can just abbreviate that as CCW. All right? So now we're going to do a couple of U-tries together. And normally in class I would have you do it your own, but again, since this is virtual or online, we're going to have to do it, you just have to follow along as I do it. All right, so here I picked L, that's my coordinates. So I looked at L, which was -2, 1, okay? So because I went over 2 spaces to the left and I went up 1 space. All right, so now I want to find L prime. L prime was -1, -2. Again, that's because I went over I started at the origin, went over 1 space to the left and 2 spaces down, okay? So we want to look at our numbers. Our numbers didn't change. I didn't have a 5 become a 6 or a 7 become a 4. So my numbers the digits stayed the same. They just changed order, but also one of them changed signs. So let's see what happened. My x's didn't change. My y's did. See, it went from +1 to -1. So again, our rule here would be -y, x. And again, down here, the only rule that we had to deal with that was rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise. All right? So now let's look at 6. If quadrilateral JKLM was rotated 180 degrees, find the coordinates of M prime. Okay, so here we just have to find one coordinate, all right? So we need to find out what M is. So M has the coordinates of -7, -1, okay? Again, -7, we went over 7 spaces to the left and 1 space down. All right, we want M prime. So remember our rule for when it's 180 degrees. It's going to be -x, -y. That means we change the signs of x and y. So M prime, -7 becomes +7, and -1 becomes +1. Okay, so this is what you need to put in the box on your Google slide. Now, just for your purpose, I'm just going to show you this is what our dot would look like if we were in class and you could graph it in class. Okay, and if we draw a line from that, again, Harper prefers a ruler, but again, we'll just make do. Okay, all right. So we didn't have to write the rule here. We used the rule to find out one of the other coordinates. And that's a lot of what we're going to see on the practice problems as well as on your test. All right, so let's go ahead and do some problems where we don't have to graph anything. It just tells us find the coordinate after transformation. So the first one says reflection across the x-axis. So we've covered that plenty of times. Remember, keep the x, change the y. Because whenever we rotate around the x-axis, that's what we keep. We keep the x value. So our rule would be x comma negative y. Okay, so now let's look at our coordinates. Okay, we have -5. Remember, that stays the same. Positive 11 has to change. So instead of positive 11, because we have to change to the opposite sign, that's going to be negative 11. All right, let's go on to number 8. Rotation of 180 degrees. We just got through with that with number 6. So remember, that is negative x, negative y. As I told you guys, rotation 180 degrees, that just basically means that let's say you have a person that was all nice and friendly when you first met them, but let's say a year later or a couple years later, they're mean and feisty and want to fight, so they've completely changed. Now, we didn't change the order, we changed both signs, okay? So that's how I remember a rotation of 180 degrees. All right. So again, that means that instead of -9 and positive 9, it's going to be -9. And instead of -6, it's going to be positive 6. Okay? Number 9, it says reflection across y equals x. So remember, this is one where we just flip our numbers. So that means it's going to be y comma x. Okay? So we're not changing any signs, we're just flipping. So that means that -2 is going to go in the front and positive 7 is going to go in the back. All right? And then the last example we're going to do together is rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise, 8, 3. So remember, our rule here is it's going to be negative y comma x, because remember, we changed our numbers. We changed the order of our numbers, but we changed the sign on the y value, so it's the opposite. So with our coordinates with 8, 3, that means the 3 is going to go in the front, and the 8 is going to go in the back. And remember, the 3 has to change, so instead of a positive 3, it's going to become a negative 3. All right? So when you work on your practice problems, 3.4, which is the lesson right after this one, make sure that when it says describe the transformation 2 ways, you give me the coordinates that I'm asking for, as well as the rule, and then, you don't have to give me the rule, but I'm sorry, but you would give me the coordinates I'm asking for, and then in the bottom box, you need to tell me in words what the rule is. You can refer back to these notes as well as your previous notes to, if you are having trouble remembering which rule goes with what. All right? So I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.